Hi, welcome to Lay the Loom. Thanks so much for stopping by the channel. My name is Cher. This is a mainly knitting podcast with a little spinning, dyeing, and weaving thrown in. I appreciate you stopping by. Today I wanted to just share with you some of my thoughts on how I'm thinking about pulling together a stripey sweater to use some leftovers from a prior project. Just some patterns I'm considering, and then I would really love to get your thoughts on some of the patterns that I'm talking about, some of the things I'm thinking about, and maybe some suggestions that I haven't thought about as well. So I've one kind of interim whip that I wanted to show before I did that, because I will keep knitting on this week. And that is I wanted to show you where I was at with my Hairst Hap hood. This is a pattern by Gudren Johnston that I cast on, I think last Sunday. By the time you're seeing this, it's been a couple weeks because I'm filming a little early. But I have done the cast on the front, knit up, done that shaping. It is more even than I have it looking on this hanger. And then you do the same thing for the back, short rows, but no bind off shaping. And then next I'll be picking up for the hood. So this is knit and garter stitch. It's been a nice little, I did a lot of it in the car because it's such an easy cast on both the front and the back. 3 needle bind off up here on the shoulder, and I will just give you a quick glimpse. Let's see, those two. I did block this. I know, who am I? As to how it will sit here. Now, and I will say I didn't think it looked this long before I blocked it. I didn't measure it, which might have been smart too. But anyway, it's going to be nice to fit under a jacket, or under a hat, under a shawl, right? Because you always have this sort of exposed, which is always part of my pajamas that's also exposed. So anyway, so I think it'll be nice lightweight, take along. I've got some travel knitting opportunities coming up this week, so wanted to just show you that before I kind of got into the other projects. So so the history of how we got here. The sweater that I knit that I had leftovers for is my Móinéar pullover. This is a pattern by Ailbíona McLochlainn, and I knit it using Woolly Mammoth Fibre Co. Natural DK. So this is a very low contrast version of Ailbíona's original pattern. Really like the corrugated ribbing on the sleeve and on the neckline. I love this sweater. I love this yarn. Y'all have heard me wax poetic gush about this yarn a number of times now, and now will be no exception. It's just the squishiest, most fabulous DK yarn. So Irish yarn, which I love, and of course Ailbíona is an Irish designer, so I loved pairing that up together. So I believe I originally had maybe 5 skeins of the, maybe 4 skeins of the pearlescence. I'm not sure. It's in my project page. Which is it's a beige, but even that you can see it coming across. There's a little bit of just this hints of little pink, little pale blue, maybe, just got a little bit of tonal variation in it. That's so pretty. This is the pearlescent. This is 200 meters and 100 grams, and it's 50% cheviot, 50% blue face luster, I said Irish. It's spun and made in the UK with UK fiber, so dyed in Northern Ireland. So it was, the original color was this one, and then the contrast on that was same yarn base, and the glitter crackling colorway, which just has these. This was done. Emma had dyed this with plants, kind of, flowers put in the yarn bundles, which is what's given this the speckles. So those are my two together that ended up in the original pattern. So I ended up with a full 100 grams skein and 55 grams of pearlescent left over, and a full 100 grams skein and 61 grams of glitter crackling. So not quite enough for a sweater. Should have looked up how much my other sweater used, but anyway. So when she had a little bit of a sale several weeks ago, I tried to look for something that would coordinate, thinking I would do something stripey with it. And so I picked up the same base, same yarn in pink grapefruit and in cozy walk. So all together, that leaves me with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full skeins, 1.5 of the original 2, give or take, and then 2 of each of the new ones to do something with. So Emma had recently knit, Emma Robinson, who is the dyer behind the Woolly Mammoth Fibre Co, had recently knit an Olga sweater, and now she did say she was a little off gauge, and I'll have to go back and look at her podcast to see what her gauge was knitting up at. And that's kind of what my inspiration started down this path. So the Olga sweater here is a pattern by Petite Knit. I have never knit a Petite Knit pattern. So controversial, but look, you can't deny she's a popular designer. I don't think I've ever had anybody say they had a problem with the pattern or had a fail with the knit. So I do have an interest to try a Petite Knit pattern, and that's driving a little bit of my thinking, is kind of how I started through this. The gauge on that sweater is actually 20 stitches to 30 rows. Now, because I have this sweater and I like the fabric, I went in today. Now, the sweater has been worn a few times, it's been washed a couple times. This sweater ultimately ended up at 17 stitches and 27 rows for 4 inches. So that was with a US 8.5 millimeter needle. So I'd kind of like to stay in that gauge. Actually, I really like to knit it on 4.5 or something to make it go faster, but it's kind of my top end of the 5 millimeters, kind of the top end of what I really like to knit on. And I tend to I may loosen up, but I would think that's a very good gauge swatch. I measured it several places today, averaged it out. My row gauge was bang on consistent. My stitch gauge fluctuated a little bit row to row, but that's what it evened out at, like 17.35 stitches in 4 inches. So the Petite Knit Olga pattern again is 20 stitches and 30 rows, and it's a 4-row repeat, which I think might drive me crazy, but kind of some of the things I was thinking about with this sweater. So there's obviously the construction, right? I can go raglan, not my favorite from a fit standpoint. This pattern, the Olga pattern, is I think you call it European sleeve, right? You start off and you knit that trapezoid in the back, then pick up for the front, come down, similar to the one I just did by Rebecca Clow. It's a nice fit pattern. I would have to certainly adjust a little bit for gauge, but I think that's not undoable. And I probably would go 8 rows on the repeat, not 4, just so that thin stripe may be too much on me. So that is definitely a strong contender. So I started thinking about, it's interesting when you look at striped sweaters, I'm fine with round neck or V neck. I don't want a boat neck. I can't do color work because I'm afraid I don't have enough yarn, although that would be ideal, but I've got what I got. I don't know that I will be able to have an even sequence stripe repeat, and I mean by like 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, because I don't have the same amount of yarn of each of them. So I'm going to have to do something that's a little bit irregular, may end up looking a little chaotic, and I'm thinking top-down construction would be ideal, because I think what I'll have to do is get the top portion, whether that's, raglan or yoke or European sleeve, and then I'm going to have to, kind of get that established, knit down the sleeve in the same sequence, and then I think I'm going to have to kind of go a couple rows of the body, a couple rows of each sleeve, so that I get down. And ultimately, if I start feeling like I'm short on yarn, I don't think I am. I think I've got enough yarn to do a full sweater, but I could do, 3/4 sleeve or crop or whatever. But I kind of want to keep at least the striping sequence, whatever it ends up being, similar. So those are things that I thought about as I looked through this. Obviously, DK weight yarn, kind of want a looser fit, and then I kind of narrowed in on that similar gauge. So the other patterns that I'm considering, the next one up is actually, and I didn't. It's called LLF, and I'm questioning because I did not. It's by Ailbíona McLochlainn, which has some nice advantages for me. I've knit her patterns before. I quite like them. I know she's a consistent designer. I've knit 2 of hers, so I know that it will work up nicely. What does she name this? Oh, Long Lost Friend. So there's actually a really nice story on Ravelry as to how she had this sweater that she was a classic crew neck. She bought in her late teens. And it was a favorite garment for like 2 decades, and somehow a sweater came up missing. So she did this pattern in homage, not as a replica, but in homage to this sweater, which I think is like very, very cool. And she's got some things about, most of them have a random stripe that, that could be, commemorative of somebody or something, and what have you. So I think that's very, very cool. That pattern is knit at 18 stitches and 24 rows in worsted weight. So my gauge would be decent for that one. Maybe I would go up a size for what I usually knit, and we now know why my Móinéar is more closely fitted than we had planned, because my gauge was tighter. It's always interesting, and I'm learning a lot as I'm doing some work on my machine knitting, which you think you're getting a much more consistent gauge because you'll have the knitter tension changing. But even from like a gauge swatch, and I'll share the saga of this with you another day as I've been working on these knitted trousers. Letting that gauge swatch rest even before you block it, and then again after you block it, can make a difference in your gauge. And then there's some really interesting examples of that. So anyway, whole other thing, I'm not a gauge swatcher really anyway, but this one I feel like I have a whole sweater to gauge swatch. I haven't knit that long ago, so I feel like I'm good to use that. So that's the second pattern that I consider, the Long Lost Friend by Ailbíona McLochlainn. The next one I looked at is the Sibling sweater by Laura Penrose, and this sweater has a 21 stitches and 32 rounds, so a little bit tighter gauge, but has possibility. Again, I can adjust the sizing for my gauge. And there's something a little different the Northwoods V Neck. This is a pattern by Jessie Made Designs. This is 18 stitches and 28 rows, so a very good gauge match. And then in DK weight. This is a drop shoulder V neck construction, a little bit wider stripe there. I couldn't tell. I think it's about 8 rounds, so it's about the row gauge. It's interesting looking through the patterns on Ravelry. I really liked some of them, and then others I didn't like the way that deep V-neck, which I really like, and solid. I didn't like how it was interacting with the stripes in some of the patterns. I thought it just wasn't that pleasing. So those are kind of the ones I started off with. There's several others out there. Obviously, there's a lot of stripe patterns. I had debated, and I looked around today at the Anker sweater, which is another petite knit pattern that has that kind of ribbing, because I didn't have any yoked sweaters. These were all drop shoulder, European shoulder, or raglans. So that the Anker sweater is 20 stitches, 28 rows. I'd still have to do a little bit of gauge math. There were 2 examples where people had done it with the stripes. It looks fine. It looked best where they put the thin stripe between the ribbing rounds, which I think would be the increase row. Again, I wouldn't have a consistent stripe pattern, I don't think, for that. But it's something I thought about. Just quick yoke sweater would be a real fast knit. It's interesting when you look at striped sweaters, they all started either full stripes, or you had a lot of patterns that start the striping after you split for the sleeves. So I considered that. It makes it easier cast on and less ends to weave in, blah, blah. But I don't know. I mean, like the Lyon Sweater by Petite Knit is one like that. There were several others that I looked at. Not coming to mind at the moment, but I don't know. I couldn't just. I thought that would be hard again, because I'd have to use one of my, one of these and have this large, bright at the top and then just the stripe. I don't know. Kind of feel like it isn't what I was originally going for. Could be swayed. So that is what I am considering. I would say, and then I did go back and look at like Tin Can knits to see if there was something in Strange Brew. It's all color work, really. I could do a flax. I've done a stripe sleeve on a flax. Of course, I did that with self-striping yarn, so it was quite easy. And then one more thought I had as I was pulling my yarns out. See if I can do this. Balance. As I was pulling my yarns out here, so here's my 4, right? I had this one sitting. Now it's not the same yarn. This is yarn to dye for Highland DK. It's not super dissimilar. Dyed with marigold that I dyed. I'd have to do a color fastness test, but I mean, that could give me another little bit of striping. I think it definitely plays nice with, if I were to open up this skein, it does have some yellows in it. I don't know. Like, would you mix? I mean, I'm kind of like, well, I could be a purist, but like I am trying to get a good scrappy, not scrappy. What do you call it? It's yarn. I'm calling it knitting from stash, but of course I had an acquisition to get there, so I don't know. Not juggling that very well at all, but I don't know. So that's what I'm considering. So I would really love your feedback. If you have a favorite striped sweater pattern, I would love to know it. If you have a favorite striped construction, I would love to know. If you've done one, please post it over on the community tab so everybody can see. Put any thoughts or recommendations on my musings here. And I would like to get this cast on in the next few weeks. So would like your feedback, and then I will share that on a regular episode, and we'll see what we do to cast on. So that's all I have for today. Appreciate you joining me, and happy knitting, spinning, dyeing, and weaving. Bye, y'all.